Well, welcome. And for the first time in 2 weeks, we're actually doing Wisdom Wednesday on Wednesday. You can't hear it now, but there's actually a studio audience behind me and they're clapping. I wore this white shirt today because when we first came up with this idea, I jokingly called it White Tees Wisdom Wednesday. And that name actually stuck for a little while. So, to throw it back to the founding of this weekly event, I am wearing a white t shirt today. Um, Once again, my name is Michael Skiller, and I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator here at CommonTime Online, where we are your all inclusive, purpose built home for arts booking, making arts education more accessible through events, virtual concert series, recitals, performances, lessons, educational content, blogs, and other community building efforts that work to engage learners, expand the outreach of arts organizations, and empower artists like me and hopefully just like you. Little housekeeping. Until January 31st, we are sponsoring the Global Schools Forum with our first ever giving campaign. Any artist on the platform, myself included, that has a little present in their profile, I'll actually show you. Let me share my screen really quickly and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Any artist you see that has this little present art of giving moniker in their profile, if you book a session with Han Chong, who does incredible multilingual improv theater lessons and events hosted here on Common Time, we will give a session to a school in the Global Schools Forum. The Global Schools Forum is an NGO that works to support the educational efforts of many underserved communities in the Southern Hemisphere. And I always get surprised when I say this, but if I remember correctly, there are about 30,000 schools, communities, and other organizations that they support through their efforts. So I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but we already know that arts education is fundamental to educating the whole student. So that's why we chose to partner with the Global Schools Forum so that their efforts aren't focusing on, what the world perceives as the quote fundamentals, like your math, your science, and your literacy. We know that an arts education is equally as fundamental as those, and that's why we're helping to get our artists into those schools. But just like only you can start forest fires, only you can help us serve these communities. So we hope that you go on, sign up as an individual or an educator or an artist, and book some sessions with these artists. They're waiting for you. Let's get to it. This week's Wisdom Wednesday, I want to talk about translanguaging. I want to talk about what exactly translanguaging is and some ways that CommonTime can help you insert some translanguaging ideas, strategies, concepts into your teaching for our arts educators out there. So, translanguaging, most definitions you find will hint at translanguaging being a group of strategies that help you use the full linguistic profile of your students. The people that did the initial research and kind of coined this term were mostly looking at bilingual students. Me coming from Georgia in the southern United States, that usually looked like Spanish speakers. So when I was coming up, there was a big push on ESL. And in the international community, there's a huge push on ESL, namely because a lot of our students in international school are looking to attend college abroad. And when English is kind of that kind of a consistent medium across many international universities, especially Western ones. Oftentimes in the international school community, if you're going to school in another country, you're going to want to go to an English system school. Otherwise, obviously, you'd have to learn the language of the country that you are in. For example, if you're an expat living in Dubai, you have to send your child to an international school that's delivering their curriculum in English. But for me, growing up, this translanguaging concept mostly looked like Spanish speakers. And the big push was for ESL, where a lot of Spanish speakers and other linguists only really use their mother tongue at home. And kind of the core foundation of their schooling was centered around English, delivering in English, learning in English. Now, the problems with that are obvious. When I was working in China, whenever we had problems with a student where they would say maybe there's a processing disorder, or maybe there's dyslexia or dysnumera, or maybe there's this, or maybe there's that, we had a really, really great SEN staff. And oftentimes their first point of action would be, okay, you're saying this student should be able to read but can't read. Okay. They would go to the Chinese teachers and say, hey, can so and so read? How's his reading in Chinese? And they may say he's at reading level, he's above reading level, this and that. So then you find out, okay, it's not a processing issue, it's not dyslexia, it's actually a language learning issue. And I think that kind of kills the confidence of a lot of our international students when you're consistently making bad grades, when you're consistently lost in class, when you're consistently not following, and your educators and the other staff there are kind of treating you as if you're dumb or stupid or have a learning disability, when in reality, it's a language issue. In my opinion, translanguaging kind of attempts to address some of that by treating the child's bilingualism as an asset rather than a weakness. Translanguaging can look like in a primary classroom where things are labeled, like the light switch or the chair may be labeled, having that in multiple languages. For me, in one of my educational experiences, translanguaging looked like having a dictionary project with the students where we would take musical vocabulary and actually translate it to Korean and English. Those are our two big languages. And that opened the students up to English. It opened them up to Chinese or Korean and vice versa. But what it also did was allow them to express their learning and kind of process that knowledge in a different way by not neglecting their mother tongue. Your mother tongue is called your mother tongue for a reason. In most of our lives, our mother is one of the most important people. And just like that person's important, that language that they give you is also important. And translanguaging looks to encourage the use of both language, to do note taking in multiple languages, to actually allow students that speak the same language to use their mother tongue when they're working in small group work, for example. So, long story short, translanguaging is allowing your education to take place across multiple languages. Originally, this term was used in reference to bilingual students that were not able to use their mother tongue when they were learning. And I've seen with my own experience that it can potentially have a detrimental effect on the student's confidence. Oftentimes in the schools that I worked at, their English did improve, therefore their academic performance did improve. But, I read a study that certain things like self-discipline and empathy are larger predictors of success than academic achievement. So it begs the question, what's the point of the academic achievement if you've lost all your confidence through trying to learn in a mono-language system that wasn't built for you, wasn't made for you? So I'm no expert on translanguaging, but I have kind of earmarked some strategies that I have found or ones that I have thought of and ways that CommonTime can actually support your efforts to input some translanguaging. Just like when I talk about differentiation, everything in your class does not have to be translanguage, especially if you are a monolinguistic person like myself. I cannot translanguage everything, but we're starting little by little. You only need a little bit of salt to make the food taste better, and anything you do is going to be better than the nothing that I think the majority of schools are doing. Um, yeah, and even as I'm looking here, it says some common translanguage strategies include bilingual or multilingual dictionaries. One thing, I was at one school that actually bought class sets of dictionaries in different languages. So we would actually tell the students, like, you know this word, but you only know it in Korean. Go look it up. Tell us. We have time. Use your knowledge. You're not, you're not unknowledgeable. You are acquiring a new language, allowing students to note take in their own language, using first language textbooks in certain situations, grouping students by language and allowing them to use that language. You may be delivering something in English, but allowing, Ahmed and Juaher to speak in Arabic when they're in small group works. You'll be surprised at how the quality of their work improves. And I've gotten in a practice of doing this now that I've been teaching overseas is when you do have a bilingual class, allowing them to actually give presentations or even submit work. If we're doing maybe formatives, not always for summatives if I require written summatives, but even for summatives, allowing them to submit work in their mother tongue. I'm an IB teacher, and one of their learner profiles is a communicator. And they state that their goal is for all IB learners to be able to communicate and express themselves in multiple languages. We have a full staff of Arabic teachers. I'm pretty sure I could buy one of them Starbucks and go sit down and have them help me translate a paragraph if I needed to. And doing simple things like that can really boost your students' confidence and help them show their learning in a way that actually shows the level of knowledge that they possess. So I'm going to take you through some strategies and how CommonTime can kind of help you after I've given you this brief overview of translanguaging. So a feature that we have on CommonTime: when you book an artist for a lesson, for a virtual, engaging, insightful, enlightening lesson in your classrooms, you have two options. A lot of our artists have pre-made sessions that you can just click, check out, buy. For example, I do a hand drumming and improvisation lesson that kind of takes you through the globe via rhythm. Then we learn those rhythms. We learn how to use different musical elements to improvise with those rhythms. And then we play an improvisation-based game. But the other type of session you can book is one where you fill out a short form where you kind of identify the learning targets you might want. You can give background to where your students are, what you're already doing in class, maybe a summative or an assessment or a concert or an evaluation that you may be working towards, so that it gives the educator more context and it allows them to create a lesson just for you. So thinking of these custom built virtual lessons, you can actually take the content you're already teaching, like rhythm and pitch, for example, and you can have a CommonTime. We have several CommonTime artists from all over the world that speak many different languages. You can actually have them come into your class and do, let's say, a visual art session, a visual art lesson in different activities with your students, and they're learning about lines. And you can have them do this session while they're also delivering vocabulary, delivering maybe even instructions, or delivering material names in another language. So imagine teaching rhythm, for example. You've already been working on rhythm, and then you can have a CommonTime artist come in and support you, almost like a push-in support. So you can have them, for example, if you are in a Chinese speaking school, we have several artists on the platform that speak both Mandarin and Cantonese. So you can actually have them come in and deliver a lesson that's hitting some of the same learning targets that you are working towards already, but doing it in Mandarin or in Cantonese. And maybe you're an English speaker at an international school looking for a way to have more translanguaging in your class. You can use a CommonTime artist, sort of like push-in support, to come in and provide some very engaging, useful content from their own personal perspective as a professional musician, if we're thinking about our rhythm example. And you can have them come in and actually teach a little bit of Mandarin or Cantonese as well. I have a note here where I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and I know a lot of primary classes do units and activities on opera or maybe ballet. Why not have one of our Hong Kong artists come in to talk about Chinese opera, where not only are they hitting your same learning targets, but they're introducing the students to a different worldview. They're able to use Mandarin or Cantonese vocabulary for these words, and your Mandarin or Cantonese speaking students would greatly benefit from being able to use their mother tongue at school. So, likewise, when you have a CommonTime artist come into your classroom to teach a lesson on something your students already know about, I'm going to go back to my example on rhythm. You can actually do a really cool activity that I read about where you can have the CommonTime artist help your students compare and contrast vocabularies from different languages. So as you have Brenda from Hong Kong coming in and hand drumming with your students, talking about quarter notes and eighth notes. She could drop in examples of how Cantonese and Mandarin speakers, I keep using an example, how they identify quarter notes, half notes, 16th notes, rest, how they identify some of those musical elements, and have your students kind of compare and contrast these languages. As we all know, when you speak multiple languages, you're activating a different part of that brain, and we want to activate that in our classes. Differentiation. So for example, if you have a lot of Hindi speaking students in your classroom, consider having Pranoy, one of our vetted CommonTime artists, come in and give a Carnatic music or a tabla lesson where he speaks and plays and performs and introduces your students to that music, but also delivering that session in a bilingual manner in both English and Hindi, so that your English speaking students are having a differentiated experience in that they're connecting a new language to these concepts. And your Hindi speaking students are having a differentiated experience in that they're able to participate in these lessons with their mother tongue. So let me back up. First thing I said is that you can have a CommonTime artist to come in and do a lesson or a recital or a workshop or a masterclass covering content or learning objectives that you're currently or have already taught, and kind of have them give you like a quasi push-in support where they're able to target students in your class and deliver in languages that support them or even introduce them to a new language. And likewise, you can have a CommonTime artist come in and give a differentiated experience by delivering a lesson in a bilingual manner, especially if you have students that identify with some of the languages that our CommonTime artists speak. And I'm going to go over those a little bit later in this presentation. So another benefit of translanguaging when using a CommonTime artist is you allow students to build real, tangible connections to the cultural aspects of the art that they are studying. So for example, we have Han Chong, who I may have mentioned in the example about the Giving campaign, who can deliver improv theater lessons in Slovak. So not only are your students learning some of the ins and outs of improv theater, but when he is able to bring in his Slovakian culture into that lesson and actually have your students speaking a few words in that language, they're building a much deeper cultural connection to what they're receiving from the artist and what they're receiving from that educational experience. One thing I'm interested in here as well is the idea of a provocation. And if you're an IB teacher, we use this word provocation a lot. But essentially, a provocation is an activity or a strategy that you can use simply to provoke a response, or provoke thought. A popular provocation in my classroom is, you could put up a picture of this carrot on your smart board or on your board, put up a picture of a carrot, and then you pass out sticky notes and you allow students to write any question, comment, idea, sentence, feelings that they have about what they're looking at. And what you'll find is that oftentimes those questions the students have, they identify prior knowledge. They allow you to edit your lesson so that you're using that inquiry cycle. You're kind of building your lesson based off their own personal inquiry. And then you're also able to differentiate your lessons based on that, because there's 10 students in your class who are wondering why this carrot is orange. Then in order to reach those students, you need to talk about in your biology lesson why this carrot is orange. You know that just by addressing that, you're differentiating to those 10 students that are wondering why carrots are orange. And it also gives you a new line of inquiry by which you can design your lessons. So in a visual arts classroom, for example, you can show the students a piece of art by Kanchana, for example, who is a very talented artist on the CommonTime platform. And she can show your students some work or some architecture. She also is very involved in architectural drawing. And have your students react to that provocation in their given language. And she can then back that up by inserting some of her own heritage and some of her own linguistic culture into that. And she speaks German as well as Hindi and some other dialects from different parts of India. So allowing your students to be provoked in their mother tongue, and then having an artist from CommonTime who can support that provocation by offering her mother tongue as well. That's a great opportunity that can be provided by an artist that is multilingual on the CommonTime platform. So I told you this conversation was going to be brief. Kind of just to backtrack, translanguaging refers to strategies you can use to allow the use of multiple languages in your classroom, paying homage to the skills that your bilingual students have and allowing them to use their mother tongue in class. Ways CommonTime can help you with this is, number one, you can have artists that fit the mother tongue profile of some of your students come in to provide a more engaging experience for those students, but also a more culturally educational experience for the students who do not speak that language. Likewise, you can also use CommonTime artists to offer like a quasi push-in support, where you can have them deliver content that you already have taught, but in their own nuanced way based on their personal and professional experiences, but you can have them make that lesson bilingual. So now other students in your class that may speak that language, or even ones that don't, are receiving content that they already know in a new, exciting, engaging way, coupled with a new language or their mother tongue as well. You can have your CommonTime artists come into a class, deliver a lesson, and allow them to compare and contrast their own vocabulary words for the different languages that they speak. This is a really, really engaging activity that gets the students thinking, gets them analyzing, and gets them just more connected to the activity that they're doing. You can use CommonTime artists to differentiate your lessons based on the language by having them offer bilingual or multilingual sessions to your students and using them as a tool to connect to students that may speak a different language as you, and also adding that extra cultural content if you have Prannoy teaching about Indian Carnatic music and also dropping gems in Hindi at the same time. You can offer provocations. You can allow students to be provoked in their thought in different languages by bringing in a bilingual or multilingual CommonTime artist. You can also bring in an artist that fits your particular student's language profile and allow them to actually share their thoughts, their ideas, their emotions in that language, just giving your students an opportunity to speak their mother tongue. And lastly, I want to tell you the languages that we offer currently on CommonTime are English, Cantonese, Malay, Slovak, Arabic, Persian, German, Italian, French, Mandarin, Hindi, Punjabi, Polish, Czech, Bengali, Korean, and a lot of other dialects from India. And we're adding new artists from different parts of the world every day. So if you're looking to add more translanguaged experiences for your art students, if you are looking to allow students to express themselves in their mother tongue and have someone be able to respond to them, if you are looking to use arts to add to the students' cultural context and maybe introduce them to a new language that they did not know, if you are looking to have a CommonTime artist come in and support you with language support while you're teaching a music lesson and have them support some of your students with language support in their mother tongue, then CommonTime is definitely the place to you. I just read off. I have a list here of more than 20 languages and dialects are spoken on our platform. And we can't wait to see what kind of trans language activities you're doing with our CommonTime artists. We can't wait to see how they support you in a bilingual or a multilingual facet. One of my favorite parts about the platform is exactly how global it is. If you're learning about opera in your classes, have a CommonTime artist come in and actually deliver that opera lesson in German, in Italian, which are the actual languages that this art form was meant to be enjoyed in. You know, having that type of bilingual cultural context adds so much variety and just a richness to the lesson. And I think the more you can blow your students away with these kind of unique educational experiences, the more personal connection that they're going to be able to draw with your lessons. So once again, I'm Michael Skiller, the Education Outreach Coordinator here at CommonTime. On January 23rd, we are live streaming The Marriage of Figaro live from the Toronto Opera Festival out in Italy, conducted by a friend of the platform, Jimmy Chang. Up on the Arts Organizations tab at the top, you can get your live stream tickets for that event. Likewise, for every session booked with a CommonTime artist that has that moniker in their profile, we will be gifting one session to a Global Schools Forum partner school. And the Global Schools Forum educationally supports underserved communities in the Southern Hemisphere. And we know that arts is fundamental to building the whole child and educating the whole child. And I really, really hope that you will help us do that. So with that, I bid you adieu, and we will see you next Wednesday. Happy translanguaging in your classes. Take advantage of your students' diversity and take advantage of the brain power that comes from being bilingual, that comes from learning in a bilingual setting. And yeah, engage your students with CommonTime. Thank you.